My father's will said I wasn't his daughter. But his lawyer whispered something worse. I hadn't worn black in years. Not for fashion reasons. Just avoidance. But that morning, under a sky that couldn't decide if it wanted to rain, I found myself standing in the front row of my father's funeral, dressed stiff with starch, heels sinking slightly into damp grass. People said the right things. He was respected. He was generous. He was strong. I nodded through it all, eyes dry, fingers clamped around the tissue I hadn't used. My brother, Thomas, stood tall beside me, the golden boy, the heir, unofficial but understood. He looked like our father. Spoke like him too. When he said a few words about legacy and honor and sacrifice, people clapped softly. I smiled the way I'd been taught. Small. Acceptable. Forgettable. After the burial, we were ushered into a quiet room at the estate lawyer's office. Thomas, myself, and a few others. The air was heavy with old books and older secrets. Mr. Halvorsen, the lawyer, cleared his throat. The will is straightforward, he said, unfolding the thick pages. To Thomas, land, shares. A watch passed down 4 generations. The lake house. To me, my name wasn't followed by inherits. It was preceded by something else. As named witness, Isabel will confirm the signed declaration dated June 12, 2001, as filed in the sealed addendum. I blinked. Witness. I said, the word foreign in my mouth. To what? Mr. Halvorsen looked up slowly. I thought maybe he hadn't heard me. But then he folded his hands and said gently, that's the thing, MS.
Veil.
You did know. At one point you remembered. My stomach turned. I don't recall anything from that year, I said, almost defensively. I was what, 8? He nodded.
8.
That's correct. The room blurred for a second, not from tears, but from some strange vertigo, like my brain was trying to pull away from something before it even arrived. I looked over at Thomas. His jaw was tight. His eyes were on the floor, like he already knew what this was about. I turned back to the lawyer. Remembered what, exactly? He didn't answer right away, just reached into the folder and slid a sealed envelope across the desk toward me. The flap read, for Isabel's eyes only upon my death. I stared at it, and for the first time that day, more than the casket, more than the eulogies, I felt it. That sharp, rising current in the blood. The cold hand of something unfinished, waiting to surface. And I had no idea what it wanted from me. Not yet. But I opened the envelope anyway. I didn't open the letter right away. I placed it on the nightstand like it was something radioactive, too dangerous to touch, too loud to ignore. That night, sleep didn't come. My body went through the motions, brushed teeth, folded clothes, turned off lights, but my mind wandered back to that single word. Witness. Not daughter. Not heir. Witness. I kept hearing Mr. Halvorsen's voice in my head. You did know. At one point, you remembered. But I didn't. I remembered scraped knees, violin lessons I hated, the sharp smell of my dad's aftershave. I remember Thomas taking the last slice of pizza and my mother's lullabies, faint and fading like music behind a closing door. Except, my mother died when I was 9. Or 10. No one ever seemed to agree. There was no gravestone. Just a box of ashes in the top drawer of my father's desk, which he never opened. For years, I thought the distance I felt from my family was because I was more sensitive, more observant, too quiet, too curious. I thought maybe Thomas fit in better because he didn't ask so many questions. But now, what if I didn't fit because I was never meant to? I started searching. The next morning, I went up to the attic where old things lived in silence. Boxes labeled Christmas, baby clothes, tack stuff. I dug through one marked Isabel. Inside, a photo album with only the first half filled. My birth certificate, creased, faintly stained. And then a second one underneath it. Same name, different font, different paper. I held them side by side. One issued in Illinois. One issued in Serbia. The handwriting on the signatures didn't match. My hands started to shake. I flipped through the album. Photos of me, but always alone. No birthday parties. No photos with mom. Just me in a swing, on a porch, in a doctor's office. Like someone was documenting a life they weren't part of. In one photo, the corner had been torn away. I could see the edge of someone's arm next to me. Female, wearing a bracelet. The same kind I used to stare at as a kid, never knowing why it felt familiar. I turned to the drawer where my father kept his letters, old holiday cards, clipped coupons, and a box I'd only seen once before. It was locked. I didn't have the key, but my hands moved on their own. I pried it open with a letter opener. Inside, empty envelopes. Most addressed to no one. Some stamped. None sent. And then, a phone. Number. Scribbled on the back of a receipt from 2009. No name. Just a number. I stared at it, then picked up my phone and typed. No voicemail. No contact photo. Just a slow, ringing tone.
Once. Twice.
Then, hello. The voice was hoarse. Familiar. I hesitated. Then spoke. This is Isabel Vale. I think you're my aunt. Silence. Then the voice whispered. So, he didn't erase everything, did he? I froze. She knew exactly why I was calling. The line crackled. For a moment, I thought she might hang up. Her breath was shaky, uneven, like she hadn't used her voice in days, or maybe years. I don't think I should be talking to you, she said finally. I told myself I'd stay out of it. Please, I whispered. I don't know what's real anymore. She exhaled.
Long.
Sharp. Like she'd been holding it in for far too long. I lost my sister because of your father, she said. 15 years of silence. And now you're calling. I'm sorry, I said, not even sure what I was apologizing for. But the will, he named me as a witness. June 12, 2001. Silence. Then, quietly. So, he didn't erase all of it. My hand tightened around the phone. What happened that year? I asked. What did I see? She didn't answer directly. Instead, she said, there was an incident. A very serious one. What kind of incident? She paused. There was a man. A fight. Your father said it was an accident. But someone, she stopped. Corrected herself. A little girl saw the whole thing. My chest tightened. I didn't need her to say it. I was that girl. I was 8, I murmured. Yes, she said. You were. But I don't remember anything. I know. Her voice shifted, softer now, but not gentler. That's what makes it worse. My thoughts spiraled. A fight. An accident. A witness. And then nothing. A memory gap, so wide it could swallow a childhood. But if I saw something, I asked, why didn't anyone say anything? Why didn't I testify? She gave a bitter laugh. You think he'd let you? I froze. You were the only one who could have brought him down, she said. You were too young to lie convincingly. That made you dangerous. I was shaking now. Then what did he do to me? Another pause. And then the words that cracked something open inside me. You weren't born in that house, Isabel. You were brought there. On a rainy night. With a suitcase you couldn't carry on your own. The room tilted. I sat down slowly, heart thudding in my throat. I don't understand. I know, she said softly. You weren't supposed to. But I thought I was his daughter. Another silence. You were his secret. And when secrets see too much, people don't bury them. They reshape them. My voice was barely audible. Where did I come from? I don't know, she admitted. But I remember the night he brought you home. Your clothes were soaked. Your shoes were gone. He said your mother had left you. That she didn't want you. She hesitated. But I saw the look in your eyes. You weren't abandoned. You were taken. I couldn't breathe. Not properly. Not fully. Somewhere, beneath the static of forgotten years, a door had started to creak open. And whatever was behind it was mine. I hadn't stepped inside the house in almost 9 years. The locks were different now. Thomas had changed them after Dad's 3rd hospital visit. But I still had the spare key, the one hidden behind the cracked stone frog in the garden, the one no one thought I remembered. The door groaned open like it didn't want me back. The air inside smelled of old wood, coffee grounds, and something faintly metallic, like time had dried out in the walls. The house looked the same, but I didn't. I walked through each room like a stranger tracing someone else's childhood. The sunroom, where Mom used to read with one leg tucked under her. The hallway with pencil marks still faintly etched. Thomas's height every birthday, mine always a few inches apart. The basement was darker than I remembered. Colder. The light bulb at the top of the stairs flickered, but I didn't turn back. I made my way down, heart pounding against my ribs, until I reached the old filing cabinet tucked behind the boiler. It was locked, but the key was still taped under the second shelf, exactly where Dad used to hide his poker money. Inside, papers, receipts, a rusted tin box, and something that made my breath catch. A VHS tape. Unlabeled. Black spine, slight crack near the corner. And under it a manila folder with my name scrawled on it. Not in my father's handwriting. Not in my mother's either. I opened it. Inside, photocopies. Medical records. A school form. A child evaluation report dated July 2001. Under guardian, my father's name. Under behavioral notes. Subject recalls incident with confusion, alternating between silence and dissociation. Repeats phrase. He said it was a game. My hands started to shake. I brought the box upstairs and called Lucas.
He didn't ask.
Questions. Just came over. Sat beside me on the floor of my apartment with an old converter and a laptop open. You ready? He asked. I nodded. The video loaded grainy at first, static, lines, then clarity. A small room. Table.
Chairs.
A child sitting stiffly in the middle. Legs dangling. Hands in her lap.
Me.
I didn't blink at first. Just stared at the screen like I was watching someone else's life unfold. On screen, a man, mid-40s, plain suit, leaned forward gently. Can you tell me what you saw, Isabel? Little me didn't speak right away. Then, in a voice soft and uncertain, I saw Daddy yell at him. Who did he yell at, sweetie? Little me paused. The man with the gray coat. And what happened next? Another pause. My tiny mouth opened slowly. He pushed him, really hard, and then he didn't move anymore. The interviewer leaned in. Did he fall? No, I said. He just stayed on the floor, like a doll. Silence. And what did your father say? This part. I felt it before I heard it. On screen, little me tilted her head. He said it was a game, that the man was just tired. Then she looked away, and that if I ever talked about it, I'd ruin everything. My whole body went cold. Lucas put a hand on my knee. I hadn't noticed I was shaking. I don't remember saying that. I whispered. Lucas didn't answer. He didn't have to. The screen faded to black. I sat there, the static still humming in my ears, my own voice echoing back from a decade and a half ago. That little girl, the one on the screen, she'd been trying to tell the truth. And someone had made her forget it. Until now. It took me 3 days to finish reading the file. Not because it was long, but because it was suffocating. I had to stop after every few pages. Not to cry, I hadn't gotten that far. But because every sentence pierced through something frozen inside me. I read slowly.
Carefully.
Then again, like the memories might rise from between the lines. According to the report, in 2001, my father was investigated for the death of Marco Vilic, listed as a distant cousin. Marco had apparently lived with our family for a few months before he died. No immigration papers. No known relatives in the U.S. No medical history. Died of blunt force trauma to the head. Cause unknown. No adult witnesses.
Just me. Me.
Entry number 27. Sole witness. 8-year-old female child, currently residing with primary suspect. Behavioral notes include repetitive phrasing, refusal to engage after referencing incident. Diagnosis: post-traumatic stress disorder. Recommendation: not suitable to testify. The case was dismissed a month later. The final note: Insufficient direct evidence. Witness unreliable. I read that line 3 times. Unreliable. But I had spoken. I had told. There was video.
I had seen my father kill a man.
I said it out loud. But when that truth came from an 8-year-old girl, isolated, trembling, and living with the man she accused, people chose not to believe it. I didn't forget. I had been made to forget. The pieces began falling into place like a jigsaw puzzle someone had abandoned 20 years ago. I didn't remember a funeral for this Marco. Didn't remember what I called him. But I remembered his large hands. The smell of worn leather. The way he told stories in a language I used to understand. Then forgot. I asked Lucas, "Do you think he could have been my real father?" Lucas didn't answer right away. He looked at me with something deep and difficult in his eyes. "There's a strong chance," he said. I didn't know whether that hurt more or made a twisted kind of sense. If Marco was my biological father, then I had watched him die. And the man who killed him raised me for 2 decades. Not out of love, but to keep me close. To keep my mouth closed. To keep my memory buried. To keep me as living evidence he could erase at any moment. I turned to the last page in the folder. Administrative notes. And then I saw it. Legal name change, Isabel Vale, original name, Mila Velic, processed on August 20th, 2001. Form signed by legal guardian, Alexander Vale. I placed my hand on that paper, like touching a gravestone. The name I carried was not mine. I was never Isabel. I was Mila. And that name, that past, had been hidden, erased, and buried beneath the shell of a good daughter, in a house full of staged photos and well-rehearsed lies. I closed my eyes, and for the first time in my life, I whispered it to myself.
Mila. The girl who saw.
The girl who spoke. And then I was made silent. Until now. Part 6. The letter that remained. I returned to the lawyer's office on a cloudy afternoon, the sky the color of ash, and the wind carrying the kind of whisper I wasn't quite ready to hear. Mr. Halvorson was already waiting. He didn't say much, just motioned for me to sit, then reached into the right-hand drawer of his desk, slowly, as if retrieving something that shouldn't exist anymore. He pulled out an ivory envelope.
Thick. Heavy.
1 line written across the front in fading ink. Only open if she asks. "It's from your father," he said, his voice rough and aged, like the ticking clock on the wall behind him that hadn't stopped since I was a child. I didn't ask, "Are you sure?" I just nodded and opened the envelope carefully. Inside was a photograph.
Old. Blurred.
Me, maybe 4 or 5 years old, sitting in the lap of a man. Not my father. Not Alexander Vale. Dark hair. Gentle smile. An arm wrapped around me, secure but not possessive. And the eyes looking at me like I was the last thing left in the world worth holding on to. On the back, written in faded blue ink. Mila and Marco. Park, March. I swallowed hard. My heart stumbled, not from shock, but from confirmation. Because I had known. Somewhere deep in my bones. I had always known. I reached for the letter beneath it. The handwriting was hurried but familiar, the same that once scribbled notes to remind me to finish homework, turn off lights, and most of all, stay quiet. I read, "If you're holding this letter, then I failed to erase it all. Memory is stubborn. It returns, even when taught how to disappear. I'm not asking for forgiveness. No one deserves forgiveness for using a child's childhood as the price for survival. I only ask that you continue doing what you've done for 20 years. Stay silent. Don't let it pull you down with me. A single word can burn everything. You stayed quiet.
And you survived.
Let what happened stay where I will be, buried." I folded the letter slowly. My fingers trembled, not from fear, but from a fury so focused it felt calm. He hadn't written "I love you." Not once. Not even an apology I could mistake for sincerity. Just one last request to keep pretending. I stood. The room seemed to tilt slightly as I moved. No one said anything more. Mr. Halvorsen looked at me with the kind of stillness that said he'd known where this was heading all along. I felt like someone had placed my past in my hands, not to preserve it but to let me decide what to do with it. And I knew I wouldn't burn it, wouldn't bury it, wouldn't stay silent. Again. I walked into the police station on a gray Monday morning, the sky heavy like stone, the air thick like the whole city was holding its breath. I didn't say much, just placed the folder on the desk, then pulled a flash drive from my coat pocket, the video, the scans, the paperwork from 2001. Everything they needed to reopen what was never truly closed. The officer on duty looked at me cautiously. Then he nodded. Quietly. No judgment. No questions. Just a witness, in the truest sense this time. Old case, he said, voice low. We'll pass it to the investigation unit. I nodded. I'll testify if needed, I said. I'm ready. That afternoon, Thomas showed up. No warning. No knock. Just walked in like he still had a key and control. He threw a letter onto the table. Why? He asked, voice cracking, not quite angry, more broken. Why couldn't you just leave it alone? I looked at him for a long moment. Not the brother I knew, but the one who believed silence was the only way to keep a family intact. I did leave it alone, I said. For 20 years. You call that peace. I call it a grave. His eyes were red, not from pain but fear. Fear that everything would unravel, that his father would be exposed, that a truth he never dared to touch might finally come knocking. You don't understand, I said softly. Peace built on a dead man and a deleted memory isn't peace. It's a prison. He didn't reply, just stared at me like he didn't recognize who I'd become. And then he left. Didn't close the door. I stood there for a long time, one hand resting on the flash drive like it had a pulse. The next evening, I put on my coat, gathered the printed documents, and walked to the courthouse. The sky was starting to rain, but I didn't cover myself. I let the water hit my shoulders, cold and honest, like it was the first time I was allowed to feel something real in the open. I stood at the base of the steps, alone. No father, no mother, no borrowed name, just me and what remained. I'm not a witness anymore. I'm a survivor. And now I remember. If something in this story made your heart pause, leave a comment. If you've ever had to pretend you were fine just to be loved, hit like. And if you believe some truths deserve to be spoken, even if it's too late, subscribe. Because sometimes, one person remembering is enough to begin again.